All right, sitting here in a sea of foot plates, I'm going to talk about this newest resistance band foot plate, the highly anticipated, much asked for reviewed Harambe Cyberplate. If this is the best among all the foot plates I have tried, this is only some of them. I have many more of them off camera and some I've actually given away. So a lot of foot plates. Pretty sure I reviewed all the major contenders, but I do have one more actually en route probably tomorrow, but I already know that one's not gonna make or outbeat this one. But I'm gonna give you guys my honest take on this Harambe Cyberplate. I was actually meaning to put this through a little bit more of the paces, but this is one of those things that I think I already know what I'm gonna say about it. There's really no more detail to honestly go into other than longevity wise. And I, of course, as always, will update you guys down below in a pinned comment if anything does happen or break. And I will talk about possibly some concerns with this. There are some pros, there are some cons, not just with the foot plate, but possibly with the Harambe system. And I'll talk about kind of at the end of the day what I think might be the ultimate resistance bandboard bar setup that I'm just using with right now. And this is just kind of going off of initial impressions. Things could be updated. If you want more of a backstory of the Cyberplate, did a whole interview with the owner and creator, Khaled, over at Harambe Systems. You guys can check that out, I'll link it down below. He said in the interview that he anticipated the price would go up. It did go up. I do have a discount code down below, a flash on the screen here if you guys do want to save anything off this Cyberplate, 10% off. Other things related can also be linked down below in the description box. As always, please let me know your thoughts, opinions, like, share, subscribe if you find this video at all helpful. Now, unboxing first impressions for this one are particularly important because this honestly was something that didn't have a lot of high hopes for, because even though I thought yes, it would preserve the bands, I didn't think it's that big of a deal because a lot of bands I still have not worn out. There are some things that can happen, but honestly, I think I'd recommend replacing the bands anyway. So band longevity, while this does say it can help preserve and does preserve the bands, Harambe Systems had extended their warranty because of that with their bands. And I've always said their bands are probably one of, if not the best quality, although very hard in stiffness. And I'll get to that in the video. I honestly thought, and I said this to you guys off recording comment section, that I thought this footplate bandboard bar system has really officially jumped the shark. There's just so many systems coming out there. Series still made their footplate. A lot of these are pretty expensive. I've talked about the rationale why they're expensive. There's budget ones out there on Amazon. I'll link those down below if you guys are curious. You can DIY stuff, of course, out of wood, which I actually do like wood. So when I took this thing out of the box, I do think it lives up to kind of what you see visually and what you expect even in that interview. It felt a little smaller and actually lighter to my expectations. I thought it was gonna feel a little heavier. I like, if you guys watched my other videos, I like a more compact footplate for a number of reasons, just for me personally. Now, if you're someone who likes a really big footplate, the clenched footplate is probably, the biggest out there. My buddy Rick Rosenblatt has a very wide one. I've said this dimension too is kind of more multi-purpose distance. But I've also said many times, even though this thing can potentially rip up your bands, I actually like the X3 footplate because it is so small, compact, and fairly light. With that said, this is a little bit bigger. Well, it's definitely bigger than the X3 footplate, but I could see for some people this might be a little tight if you have a wide shoe. So I'm a 11.5, 12 shoe basically, and my foot does drape over this. With that said, it's wider than the X3. And to me, this is probably the nice sweet spot dimensions as far as a footplate is concerned. The look and aesthetics are definitely there, and Harambe has always kind of put aesthetics and a certain feel to their footplates. Their old footplate kind of had dual channels, and this one does have multi-channels. A little more versatile in that regard because you have rollers on this side to put the bands this way. You can put the bands horizontal rollers, and they even have this kind of corner notch that you can do some things, anchor it to a corner, doing things like lateral raises or rows or curls, something like that. Some might argue it's a little less versatile. Companies like Clench have their holes, also have multi-channels. Serious Steel also has some holes in their new one. Also about kind of the same dimensions, I think, as the Harambe Cyberplate. The Vector one I've covered too, which I have off camera, also has some options there. So versatility-wise, the rollers are really kind of where it's at. And I will say first impressions, this is why I feel like this video does not have to go that long-winded. It legit does make a difference. I will say, and I was surprised going back and forth between doing, just using the wood board, which I actually like the most, because I found that plastic, even the Harambe and other ones, X3 actually, I think the metal doesn't slip as much. There's a lot of kind of slippage. If you know what I'm talking about, you can do deadlifts and it kind of catches and then kind of gives on one side. So I find that a lot with the plastic ones. So oftentimes I've used wood boards, and I've said wood boards I actually like a little more because the bands seem to kind of cling on. With that said, I was actually surprised how much grip was on these when you actually go back and forth, because I first did squats and then I did deadlifts, and extremely surprised. Like they said it's smooth. It's definitely smooth, but it's almost to such a degree where you don't really fully appreciate it and notice it till you go back and forth with even a wood one. So I didn't realize how much the bands actually catch. And on that initial pull, you actually feel a lot of hard tension. And not only that, I found once I was doing this, every other foot plate, or at least the ones I was comparing it to, felt kind of uneven. And I found myself really trying to find that sweet spot. This one with the rollers, everything just feels totally just, lack of a better word, just really smooth. It's totally even. There is no catch. As we said in the interview with Khaled, if you stack bands, there's not really any issue with that increasing the catch or kind of any other instability or just feeling off when you stack bands and other foot plates. So that was definitely cool. Minor issue, if you're just kind of going on the fly and you're throwing things underneath, you might find where one of the bands gets caught, you know, right here. That's kind of a minor thing. The other con that I noticed, and this just happened, I've not used this that much, is that I've already managed to scuff this up. I wasn't trying to go out of my way. I actually tried doing things in the solid ground for a number of reasons because I wanted to test out these rubber things right here. This rubber thing just kind of flopped right off. I do not anticipate these ones right here, these circle ones, are gonna fly off. It seems like they're kind of shifting a little bit. And I saw that from day one when I started seeing this, is that these are probably the first things to go. And they did. Not a giant deal. The good thing though, where it counts, according to Khaled, is that these rollers are super stiff. The board's not gonna break anytime soon. There is zero maintenance you have to do. You see some kind of oil or something in between the rollers there, but otherwise, zero maintenance. But I would expect this thing to get kind of dinged up and show some wear and tear over time. Other things with aesthetics with this foot plate that I just gotta say personally is that I'm not sure about the name CyberPlate. I see maybe the carryover. I mean, it looks more like something that you would see Tony Stark make in the Middle East in Iron Man 1. A little more primitive industrial look than I would say technological and cyber, like something that you know, Tesla would make, and that might have triggered a few people one way or another, but just saying, it doesn't look like technological. For the word CyberPlate, and they even renamed their barbell, which it's over here, the CyberBar. So that is the one thing I mean, I get it and I don't get it, honestly. So if it were me, I would kind of go more of an industrial feel, because while it is, I'm sure, state of the art in the way it's machined, it has more of a primitive, raw look to it. And I think even with the monkey logoing and branding, I think they could have done something with that. That's my own little 2 cents about it. But CyberPlate is a cool name, nonetheless. I'll give it that. I'll say this now and I'll say it again at the end. This is probably the best foot plate. I say probably because it really depends on your personal preference. If you're looking for a foot plate that really takes the actual band tension to a nice, smooth, natural level, and I think if you use this and you go back to a regular foot plate, I think you're going to be really disappointed. So it's one of those things, like many products I've said, is it worth it? It's up to you because it is expensive. If you don't know any better, you're not going to know any better. But if you had all these foot plates in front of me, I think if you blindfolded, especially if I blindfolded you, you would say this one feels the best. So no question, as far as just general feel of what I like to do with foot plate, this thing checks all the boxes. Now, personal preferences for some people, they might want a wide foot plate. They might want something with some holes or even some versatile options like this one. Actually, is pretty versatile from my buddy over at Ripped by Rosenblatt. Has these hooks on top where you can anchor bands on top. That's an underrated function there. So functionality, it's pretty basic to just standard standing foot plate fare. All that considered, the biggest con, this is kind of a side point towards Harambe in general, is that I don't necessarily like how it pairs with now their new dubbed, I think this was Manhattan bar, now it's called the CyberBar again. With respect, and again, recognizing personal preference and to be kind, I just do not like the Sling system. Much as I try it, I was trying to really match the aesthetics and just continuity of using their barbell with their plate. I just started getting frustrated again. I found the Sling can kind of would flop over. I didn't like the time it took to switch things out. I just don't like the Sling. Now the Sling offers a lot of versatility in lengthening, increasing, and decreasing tension of the bands. I just don't like it. I'll just say that if I said enough. I also think for the standard bar setup that I've said before, again, personal preference, when you do things, I like a nice straight line when I'm doing things, curls and just presses. I think there's something too, I don't know if it's just me, when the bar is wider than the foot plate. So that is something, and if there's any critique I would give Harambe, or I think they should make next, and this might go against their whole mantra and their whole brand, is I would find or make another bar that is not a Sling. I think there's other things you can do that are not within, or that are within legal things, not to break patents. And so once I started trying things like the clench bar, that was the next thing I tried. I thought this was actually pretty much almost perfect dimensions. I liked that a lot. Even tried the X3 long bar. I would say the X3 long bar feels better. I like that definitely more than their CyberBar, so that pairs nicely. But the perfect thing I found, and I hate to say this because some of you guys might get triggered by this, but the X3 bar, this is kind of heresy in the whole X3 Harambe camp. X3 bar, short bar with the Harambe foot plate. Again, personal preference. I like the smaller bar for a number of reasons, for all the things that I do it for: bicep curls, bent over rows, overhead presses. Those things specifically for a barbell, I actually like these tighter dimensions. I think aesthetically, if it goes together, it makes everything just a much more smooth, even experience with the hooks. Now, the other thing too is the Harambe bands I've said before, so I'm kind of repeating myself, a little too stiff for my liking. I actually found, and I'll say this now, I think the ideal setup, if I had to pick like what's the best barbell pairing with a footplate and bands, I like this bar with the Harambe footplate and 32-inch serious steel bands. And I say that for me because it could just be my ideal tension. Made a whole video on this. I think finding ideal tension is key to resistance band training. Some of that's your own personal preference. That's where different bands and dimensions and lengths and gives kind of come off. The Harambe bands just feel a little bit, again, too stiff for me in the dimensions. So that would be my ideal setup if I'm pairing all these things together. So all that being said, in summary, if someone asked me today of all the foot plates I try with resistance bands, which one would be my favorite overall? As of right now, I think it has to be definitely the winner. This is the best resistance band foot plate to date of all the things that I just said. I think if you're doing the standard fare exercises with a foot plate, this is gonna hit all cylinders. If you want the more versatility, more holes, more options, you want a wider plate, that's where something like one of these other companies are gonna come in handy. But as far as the actual overall experience, how things feel, and just the smoothness and tension it gives off, CyberPlate is gonna be hard to beat, no question. Any other comments, questions, concerns, you guys let me know. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Try to be as honest and straightforward with you guys. Again, if you guys wanna save money off anything Harambe systems, check out the discount codes down below, and I'll see you guys on the next video.